All right, just because, like I said, I'd rather start with something new. I want you all to please go to your desktop, right mouse click, choose new, and just create a new folder in there. Okay? And I call this MLB Hats app. MLB HATS hyphen APP. All right? We want to still work on the same thing I told you about earlier. And it's going to have about 5 or 6 major components in it. First of all, one thing that we're going to work on, and we haven't talked about this at all, are what are referred to as JWTs, which are JSON Web Tokens. And in other words, if you say, I don't know what that is, you probably wouldn't. But if somebody is going to want to use our store, they have to log in first. That should make sense to you, all right? And if they're not logged in, we either push them to a login screen or we just refuse to let them go any further type of thing, all right? Well, if they have the ability to log in, they should have the ability to log out type of an idea as well. That should make sense. And again, the way we'll use these will be a combination of well, basically it'll be JSON Web Tokens. All right, we want people to be able to put items into their shopping cart. We want to let them remove items that are in their shopping cart. We want to let them edit items in their shopping cart. So if they said they accidentally put down, instead of 1 hat, they fat fingered and put 11 hats or whatever, no, and they want to change it, they should be able to. So we want to let them run the gamut, basically, of CRUD stuff that's in there. All right. We also want to make sure that as they add stuff to their shopping cart, we have a running total so they know what their bill is. Okay. All right. And finally, we want to give them the option to pay and check out. In other words, they can create an order, and when they create the order, that should empty their cart. All right. And there's different ways that this can be done. Again, there is PayPal has got a sandbox. There's a product called Stripe that they basically have a sandbox, etc. We'll talk about that as we get into it. All right. So again, on the front end side, we're going to use React. Is going to be basically our front end. Now we're going to use a part of React that we haven't talked about yet. That's called Redux, which makes it easier to use and do state management. We're not going to talk about that today. We're probably either going to get into it tomorrow or Thursday. We'll see how it goes. All right. The back end, again, we'll use Express along with Node, as you'd guess, and we'll use MongoDB. Okay, so that stuff, at least, there should be nothing new there. We're going to create REST APIs using Express and then use those endpoints. So again, you'll either be able to, depending on how we do this, if you want to be able to really test stuff, you might go out to that Thunder client that we've talked about before, go out to Postman, etc. All right? Okay. All right. So we've created that folder. All right. I'm going to CD into that folder. Well, I'm just going to double click on it for now. All right, just like that. And I'm going to right mouse click on here and do the old git bash here. This is nothing new. Okay. All right. And this is a little review because it's been a while since we've done this, but we're going to do the old npm init. And again, I know you've done that before. We've all done this before. All right. And I'm going to just have it full screen. All right. So package name, that's good. MLB hats -app. Version 1.0.0, that's fine. The description, I'm just going to put MERN stack e-commerce application. Something like that. And again, whatever you put down is totally fine. It's up to you anyway. All right? All right, the entry point, again, I don't like saying index, so I'm going to put in here server.js. If you really want to leave it in there as index, you can. It doesn't hurt anything. The test command, we're not doing any extra testing. There are different testing things that are available in here, products like Mocha, and there's a few other ones that you can use. We're not doing that. There's just not enough time. I don't have the expertise to do that. I don't want to waste your time. So hit enter there. The Git repository, well, had we made a repository already, this would be set up, right? We don't have one yet, so why don't we make one? It's called MLB Hat. So let's stop right here. Let's go into GitHub. And let's make a new repository. And again, it will be MLB hyphen, what was it, MLB hats app, I think, dash app. I think that's what it was. All right, says that's available. That's always good. I'm going to double check. I know that's what it is, but I'm going to check anyway. MLB hats dash app. Okay. All right. And again, yours, of course, as always, will be private. Mine will be public. I'm going to click Create Repository. It's now done that. Now, I am going to just copy just this. Why? Because we'd already started to create our file, right? We'd already started to create our package.json file. I don't know if it's smart enough that it'll put that in. I don't think it will. So I'm just going to grab that code right there, the HTTPS, etc., the stuff that's there. Then I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to paste that in, like that. All right? The keywords, don't worry about that. The author, put your own name in, leave it blank, it's up to you. The license, you can leave it, I like MIT, but if you want to leave it as ISC, it doesn't matter. And you should have something that looks similar to this for your package.json when you get done. Now, we're going to add several different packages in here, just not at this particular time, but we will add several packages into this. So is it okay? Yes. I'm going to clear then. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to add right away, it's not that we have to, but you know this as well as I do, and that is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do my npm I minus capital D, and we'll put in nodemon. You know what nodemon is. We shouldn't have to talk about that right now. Okay? Now, we are going to go in just a second when this comes back. All right, so I brought in nodemon. I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to edit my packages.json file directly. And again, I'm just going to do it from here. You can go into code or whatever. It's not going to matter. But I just want to take a quick look at what's in here. So you can see my dev dependency. That's good. We've talked about this stuff before. I'm going to remove this test thing because we don't have a test. All right. And I am going to put in here, we'll put in a couple different things, but for now, all right, we'll just put in here our old dev, whoops, not dev, and nodemon server, or you can put server.js, it really doesn't matter. For now, I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? All right, and I'm going to save. And I'm going to close this for now. There's more things that we will want to add, all right? But rather than add them, remember, it is totally possible, plausible to come in and add packages. You can come in and you can literally add them right there. You can manually type in these things. All right, I don't see the advantage of doing that. All right, but you can. All right, I'm not going to. So I'm going to come back into here, and we're back over here, and I'm going to add some packages right now. All right, so npm I, and we're going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 or 7 packages. The first one is Bcrypt, which is going to allow us to encrypt our passwords. All right. The next one is config, however you pronounce it, express, JSON web token, Mongoose, Validator, and it's interesting because, again, I'm taking this one off of some articles I found online. They do it here. I don't see the advantage, but we're also going to add one more package in just a second that's called concurrently. And what concurrently does is it allows you to run in one terminal window. You can have both a client and a server running at once at the same time, concurrently. And if you don't do that, all right, if you don't do that, then you have to have two different terminal windows open. We don't want that, so I'm going to put it in here. Whenever I've used this, I put it in as a development dependency like NodeMon. But in this article, the person doesn't do that. They put it right in here. So that should be, I think, at least, for now, everything we need. Bcrypt, concurrently, config, Express, JS Web Token, Mongoose, and Validator. Now, a couple things. First of all, we're using Bcrypt. We may end up changing that because there's both a Bcrypt and a Bcrypt JS. All right? And there's a lot of debate as far as which one is easier to use. We could take some time and bring up the page, under the Node Package Manager for each one of these. But instead of doing that, let's just quickly talk. Again, Bcrypt is what we're going to use to encrypt the user's password. So if they want to go in and set up an account, we want to make sure that if they've got a password and they put in hello123, that it doesn't go in there as clear text, that it's encrypted. All right? And what Bcrypt and Bcrypt JS both do is they do what's called salting, basically, the password. So they run it through some algorithms, in other words. Okay? All right, the config stuff will basically be used, so if we want a .env file, that we'll be able to use that. Express, I shouldn't have to explain. We've used that on countless occasions before. The JSON Web Token is going to allow us to use that. That's the JWT that I mentioned to you before. All right, that we will use in conjunction with logging in. Mongoose, again, we've used before. I shouldn't have to explain that one to you. All right. Validator, we are actually going to use to validate, for example, that if we ask a person for their email address, that they put in a valid email address, that it's been formatted validly. All right. And concurrently, I just mentioned to you. Okay. So I hit enter. And here it comes, and now I've got 7 packages. Again, yours may still be running, and it's totally fine. But again, I'm just going to come in here for my own edification and check. So I'm going to open this folder up now in VS Code. And there it is. And looking at my package.json, don't need that. I want to double check and notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 dependencies. The same ones I just added, and I should have my dev dependency, which is NodeMon. And if yours doesn't look exactly like mine and the order in which it doesn't matter. All right, it does put these in an alphabetic order. All right, but sometimes, it depends on the order. I think it just timestamps them. And I put in NodeMon before I put in the other ones. I think if I had put in NodeMon next, it would have been down below this. So it really and truly doesn't matter much one way or the other. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And let's open up in here. We said that the file that we were going to use was server.js. We don't have that. So let's make it. So I'm going to click in here, right mouse click, and just choose new file and put in server.js. Now, we will have to have some way to distinguish between what we're doing on the server side and what we're doing on the client side. All right, and we'll worry about that when we get to that point. Okay, so some of the stuff I'm going to put in here you've already seen. Okay, and we've used this before. Now this is going back and doing it the old way. So all right, so just why don't you start by just putting that in, and then I'll just say something about that. All right. this is considered more the old school way of doing this. You can actually make some changes to your code. And you know how we're using like export default, etc.? If you change the way you put in that line, you can actually change this. I'm not going to, but you can change this so that it looks more ES6-like. In other words, so that it says import express from express. See the difference? So this is more old school. You still see both of them out there. All right? Okay. So that's the first one. We want to bring in Mongoose right away. And again, pretty much everything that's in here is stuff that we've already used in, earlier things that we've worked on. All right? Now, we are going to change this up a little bit because it's going to give me the chance to talk to you about the fact that virtually everything that we've done until we got to the Heroku part, all right, which I know is a 4-letter word to some of you, but until we got to Heroku, everything that we'd done basically was what's known as, we were doing production builds. In other words, it was available on our machine, but it wasn't available on any other machine. All right, once we pushed it out to Heroku and made it available to the world, so to speak, all right, then we were not in production. We were not really in production mode anymore. Actually, we were in development mode now, and that puts us into production mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually come in here and make a check. So we're going to say if process dot env dot, and you'll notice that there's some IntelliSense in here. So I don't think it's going to find it, but node env, if it's triple equal to production. So in other words, there's development and there's production. And what we're saying is if we're in production mode, all right? All right. So app.use. And all we're doing is we're pathing some stuff in here. So don't worry about really what's going on right there. So. And let me wrap this. A little easier for you to see. That up. There we go. Again, we are just doing some pathing in here. We're letting the system know if that makes no sense to you, it'll make more sense to you as we go on. That's the best thing I can tell you for right now. Okay? All right. Now, we are going to want to connect to MongoDB. All right? Now, I'm going to show you what I did. Now, this isn't going to work for you, all right? So I put in here, you know, if you remember from, let me see if I grabbed it. All right, so I've got this. And just so you know, it's like, okay, fine, where'd you get that from? Well, the blog program. If you remember in the blog program, in our server.js file, we put this in here, but yours said blog. Yours wouldn't look like mine. You would have a different username, possibly, if you didn't use username 1. You would have your password in there. Remember that? So you can go back later if you want and find that, is what I'm telling you. For now, I'm just going to comment that out. All right, we won't need it, but I just wanted to show you what it was and where I got it from. All right, because there's no way in heck I'd remember that. All right, so what we're going to do is, and this won't work now because this right here is what we're going to want to use to put into our .env file in a little bit. All right, and notice I changed it to hats. We don't have something named hats, but remember when you run the program, it'll automatically create that database for you, like it did with our blog. All right, so I'm going to come down into here and I'm going to say, and again, all I'm telling it right there is what I want to have happen. What I want to have happen is I want you to go into the .env file and find something that's been created in there that's called dburi, all right, which is a Uniform Resource Indicator, which is a superset of a URL. One of the main differences between a URI and a URL is URLs have to exist. You already know that. If you put in a bad URL, you get a 404 error. With a URI, it doesn't necessarily have to exist. All right? And if you say, I don't get it, you don't have to worry about it. I'm just telling it to you. Okay? All right. Then another thing that we'll put in here, and again, you'll see this, but we'll say const, and we've used this before. It doesn't matter if you make this uppercase or lowercase. Let's just keep it lower. And I don't know, I put 4,000 in there. Really and truly, again, doesn't matter. But this is another thing that by now, this should just make sense to you. This says if I do have, you know, basically this is saying, hey, when we get up to Heroku or whatever we're using to run this with, if they've got something that they use to run the port on, then use that. If not, so typically if we're just in development mode, use 4,000. All right, so again, there shouldn't be anything in there that's new as far as that goes. All right. Now we're going to attempt to connect the Mongoose. Again, we're going to have a problem right now because that dburi technically doesn't exist. All right. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that you can put in here. All right, there's a bunch of different options. To my knowledge, none of them are required anymore. You used to have to say use new URL parser, and you had to set it to true. You had to say use unified topology, and you had to set it to true. You used to have to say use create index and set it to true. I don't think you have to do any of that anymore. Could I be wrong? Of course I could be wrong. All right, but to my knowledge, I'm not. So that's what we would put in there if we wanted to. All right. Now we are attempting to connect, and you know as well as I do that when you attempt to connect, it is either going to A, succeed, or B, fail. All right. And what this actually ends up returning back to us is one of those promises that we talked about before. All right. So I'm going to say here, dot then. So that's the good news. We could have put a console log or whatever in here, but all we're doing is we're saying, hey, if it worked, start listing on that port. That's all we're telling it to do. All right? But if for some reason it doesn't work, we're just going to do a console log. All right? So again, we're attempting, and then we can even put a comment here. You don't have to, but attempt to connect to DB. All right? And if it works, just get the app.listen. If it doesn't work, we'll get an error. I'm not going to run it right now because since this isn't set, I would be willing to bet you that that's what's going to fire. And that should make sense to you. All right? Okay. So, do a file save. All right? And then let's come in to here. And we're going to try to see if we can do this and set it up pretty much, again, so that it is a model view controller type of architecture. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to choose new folder, and we'll make a models folder. We've done this, not going to spell it right though. All right. So I've now got a models folder right here. And we're going to make 3 or 4 of these models right now. And again, we're going to do it more the old-fashioned way, where we're going to use export default. All right? So the first one we're going to create is going to be called, it's going to be a user model. So it's going to be the person. So I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call it user model.js. All right? Like I said, we'll make 3 or 4 of these. And what we're going to say each user has, well, we're going to say that each user, all right, is going to have a name. Now, we could put first name and last name. I'm just going to put a name in there, okay? Okay, but we could break it down, put a first name, middle initial, last name. I'm just going to say name, all right? Each user must have an email. Each user must have a password. And we are going to basically make sure that we know the date each user registered. All right. I didn't realize, does anybody have any idea? Because I don't know how long Facebook has even been around. Does anybody know? No.
2006 maybe.
Since what?
Like 2006.
Okay. And that would make it, what, like 15 years old? That sounds about right. Because I didn't know I'd been on it that long, but I got a thing the other day that I've been friends with my daughter for 12 years on Facebook, and I had no idea I'd been on there that long. All right. I'm not a troll. My wife is. But watch what I say. But I go on once or twice a day. But I don't follow anybody or anything else. So okay. So this is going to be set up pretty much the way that we've set stuff up in the past, such as I'm going to start with const mongoose equal require mongoose. All right. Const schema equal mongoose dot schema. All right, and we're going to put a require validator in here. All right, and again, we talked about that validator before, and all we want to make sure is, as I mentioned before, that if a person puts in an email address, that it is a validly formatted email. I mean, if somebody puts in some doofus at gmail.com, that's going to pass because it's just checking to see if it's formatted correctly. But if I put hello, it'll fail because it's not formatted correctly. All right, so we're going to put in here const is email equal require validator. And again, you'll notice that a couple of these are gray because we are not yet using them. All right. Now, I'm going to put in 2 lines of code, but there'll be stuff in between these. I just want to make sure you understand that these are kind of the bookends, so to speak, when you start to do this. So I'm going to come in here and first say const user schema equals new schema, and we need a paren, and we need a curly, and we hit enter. Now there's going to be a bunch of stuff that's going to go in there. When we're all done, we're going to say, and this, I'm going to show you this because we are going to, well, we'll just do it like this. I'm going to put it in like this. Module dot exports equal user. This is a little different than we've done it before. Don't worry about it. Mongoose dot model, and we're going to say user, and we're going to have user schema. All right, and again, let me close that so you can see all of it. All right. All this line is doing the export, so don't worry that it looks a little different. We just are exporting it so we can import it into another file that we're using in the program. That's all you have to worry about for right now. Okay? All right. So in here, again, I told you there'd be 4 different fields. So the first one we're going to have, as you'd guess, is name. All right? So we're going to have name. We're going to say the type of name is going to be a string, and required is going to be true. Now there shouldn't be anything earth-shattering about that. That should make sense to everybody. All right. Now, for the email and for the password, we're going to have a little bit more. All right. For the email, what we want to do is if this fails, we just want to give them a message. Now, all I put down was please enter a valid email. You can put any message in there you want. All right. I mean, I've always found you don't want the message to be terse. You never want to insult somebody. All right. But you should make it simple so that anybody can look at it and figure out what the problem was. So this will be the email. Oops. All right. We move this down a bit. There we go. All right. So again, the type will be string. The required, yeah, again, it's going to be true, but we're going to put it in like this. True, please enter an email. So that is if you don't put anything in there. Get rid of that. Come on, get out of there. Close. There we go. All right. And again, that's something that you could change if you were so inclined. All right. Well, we want unique. We want each email that's in there to be unique. All right. In other words, we don't want to have it where a bunch of different people are sharing the same email. That doesn't make sense. All right. We're also going to force this. We're going to say lowercase true. We don't want any uppercase. I don't know why it keeps doing that. All right. And we're also going to validate. All right. This one is if they leave the email out, but we're also going to put in here validate, and again, this will be the is email, so it'll check that Boolean flag, and we'll put in here, please enter a valid email. You can say a valid email address. It really and truly does not matter what you're going to say in there. My question to you is, you know, we just brought in this right here. Does using that validator, does that make sense to people? It's just going to be a Boolean. All right. All right, so we've got that. And then let's do the password. And again, the type will be string. The required will look a lot like the one we just put in. It'll be true. And we'll say, please enter a valid password. And then we'll say min length. You can put a maximum length on here. I'm just going to leave it at just a min length. And I'm going to make it 8. All right, it's just an arbitrary value. And I'll just say here, minimum password length is 8 characters. So you could change this. You could put a lot more stuff into this. In other words, if you were to go back and decide, you've all done this, I'm sure, where you've created a password, you got to have one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, a number, a special character. You could do all that stuff. All right, that's not the intent of what we're working on right now, though. All right? So let's come down to here. There's one more field, and this will be the register date. So again, this, for lack of better words, is how long has this person been a customer? Does that make sense to everybody? All right, and I'm going to come in here, and we're going to make the type, the type date, and we're going to give it a default, because I don't want to have to put that in. So we'll just put in date.now, which again is going to say that the current date, if they register, that'll be the register date. And that should make sense to everybody. Now, I'm just asking, are there any questions on any of that stuff that we just went over? Is there anything in there that doesn't make sense? All right. Let's do one more of these. So I'm going to do a file and a save. If you haven't saved, probably a good time to. You're all caught up. Are you caught up? You can tell I've got
Yeah.
that bracket colorizer in there too, if you take a look in here, which again, you may like and it may drive you nuts. I don't know.
Those, I'm assuming those are supposed to be square brackets.
Where's that?
The
Here?
yellow ones.
Yes.
The yellow's a bit
They're
more.
really
Yes.
crazy.
Oh, sorry. Yes, they are square brackets.
I got them.
All right. Questions so far? All right. So I'm going to close the user model. Why? Because I'm about to create another one in here. So make sure, again, you're in your models. All right. So right now there's only user model in there, but I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to do a file. This will be item model. We could call it product model.js, item model.js. It doesn't really matter. All right. And we'll start doing this like we did the other one. So I can retype or I can go back into here. Basically, I just want these two lines to begin with. So I'm just going to copy them from in there. You don't have to do that, but so I've got those. All right. And now I want to say const item schema. Again, equals new schema. All right. Oops. Try that again. Okay, and just like before, I'm just going to come down to the bottom here and say module.exports equal item equal mongoose dot model. It's going to run off the page here, so there we go. Dot model item schema. Okay, and we're going to put our stuff in there in just a second, but I'm just, again, like I said, I want you all to be able to catch up. This is that products file that I sent you the other day. Now, just so you see this, and I'll come right back to this, so if you're still typing, don't worry about it. I'll come right back to it. But I don't remember even where we put this or where I put it in my mess of junk. But, let me look. All right, and I know it was in one of these, but I'm sure I'll grab the wrong one, but we'll see. No, that's the right one. Now, what we are going to have to do, look on the screen if you would please, is remove all of those. Because we want MongoDB to automatically put in the IDs for us. All right, this was put in because at first I was going to have us just work with a file in JSON like that. All right, but it'll be a lot faster for us to do it and they basically just drop this in. So eventually we're going to remove all those lines and say underscore ID colon. You don't have to do it right now, but just so you know that. All right. Okay, So in here, these are going to be, this is, again, like I told you, this is the stuff I gave you before. So it's name, and that's the name of the product. The type is a string, and the required is true. Now, there's all sorts of stuff we could put in here. We could do validation in here, and we could basically make just about every field in here valid. Does that make sense to everybody? I didn't want to go too nuts with it, so I'm just going to leave it like this. And then we've got an image, and that's that product image. And basically, it's going to be a path to the image, so the type will be string. And again, required is going to be true. And I thought about this. Did I really want to make the required true on there? And you could do it either way. You could make a case both ways, because if it's a brand new hat or whatever your product is, you might not have a picture of it yet. All right? It's funny. I'm going to tell you this. You won't care, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. That when I lived in Rockton, Illinois, I was literally about 5 miles from the city of Beloit. All right? The reason I'm telling you that is Beloit has a minor league baseball team. They're called the Beloit Snappers, and it was like a snapping turtle. I always thought it was kind of neat. For whatever reason, they've changed their name now. And does anybody know what you call a goose that doesn't migrate in the winter? It's called a sky carp. I never heard of that before. So now the Beloit will be the Beloit sky carp. All right? So the reason I'm telling you that is when they made that change, they did have a logo, but let's say they didn't have a logo. So there might not have been a picture of that hat. All right? So again, we didn't have to say required true. I just did. So here's the description. And again, look very similar. The type is string. The required is true. I think there were about 3 or 4 more fields. Then we've got category. Right now, the only thing we're selling is hats. But again, the idea is if this becomes a popular enough company, they may sell things other than hats. All right? I have never been to one of those. There is like a flip your lid or one of those. I think it's called lids. I've seen them in different malls. I have no idea if they sell other stuff there or not. All right? But for now, we're just going to, again, it'll be a type string and a required true. A price. Make sure on this one, we want the type to be number. We want required to be true. Again, I did not put in any validation here, but we might have wanted to have a minimum price, for example. I just left it off. But that might be something that later on you'd want to think about doing. That's all. All right. And we have what's called account in stock. Again, that's what I called it in the file that I gave you. It's not a great name, but it's what I used. So I'm using it again. It's again going to be type number. It's again going to be required. And we're going to have the default of 0. So we will give that a default. Did it have to have a default? No. All right. And then finally, date added, which again will be just like we did before. It'll be a type. And, oh, I don't have my comma here. That's why I'm getting that error. There we go. So it's a type date, and the default, it will be a date dot now. In fact, I think it's a little n. Yep, it's a little n. So the title, or I should say the name of the product, the image of the product, the description of the product, the brand, all right, or type of product, the category, all right. And remember, like right now, literally for every one of these, the category is going to be hat. And then for the brand, I changed it around. I had like flip your lid and hats are us or whatever, a few of those. All right. It's 108. We're going to put in 2 more of these, and we're not going to do that much more today, but it is 108. Let's take a break till 120, and then we'll wrap it up. It'll probably take about 10 or 15 more minutes. That's going to be it for today. I just wanted to get all of our stuff set up, so to speak. Okay. So like I said, it's 109. I'll tell you what. Let's come back at 125. Just going to pause that. All right, I'm going to continue on then. So far in our models folder, we've created an item model and a user model. So I'm going to come in here and create a third model, which will be a cart model. So inside of models, again, I'm going to right mouse click, choose new file, and call this cartmodel.js. All right, smaller than most of the rest of them, but I'm going to, again, just grab these first 2 lines, put those in there. So oh, that was nice. That's putting your fingers on the wrong keys. All right, so this is going to be basically the shopping cart for somebody, okay? So the first thing we'll need to know is, who is it? So we'll put in here user ID. And it's just going to be of type string. We shouldn't even have to say it's required. That should just be available to us, because the way we're going to set this up is they couldn't, if they weren't logged in, they couldn't make an order anyway, okay? All right, I think you'd agree with this, that it's quite possible that they could have a number of items. I mean, that's what we hope for. So we're going to come in here, we're going to say items, but we're going to change this around a little bit in that we're going to make it an array. All right, so again, I put this in there. That's both a bracket and a curly brace. All right, well, each product must have a product ID, and that'll be of type string. Okay. Each product will have a name that will be of type string. All right. And each one will have a quantity. It'll be a little bit different here. Why? Because, well, the type will be number. The required will be true, because if they haven't ordered anything, it wouldn't make much sense for them to even be here. We'll put a minimum of 1, and we'll put a message in here that says quantity cannot be less than 1. And we'll even come in, whoops, hold on, there's going to be a colon there, that's why I'm getting that error, okay? And the default, we'll make it 1 too. Again, these are just, they're not necessarily the way that they have to be, but most of the time when somebody comes in, if they're going to buy a hat, they're going to buy 1. Now, is it possible? Sure, they could be buying them for friends or gifts or whatever, and they could be more than 1. That's totally possible. But we're not going to even worry about that, to be honest with you. All right. And then finally, we're going to have a price in here. Oh, that's going to be, wait a minute, hold it. That's in here, because each item better have a price, so that's going to have a price in here. And we'll again put in here type number. And again, it would be totally possible and plausible for us to come back in there and want to put a default in or something else. I'm not worrying too much about this stuff right now. All right? And eventually, they're going to have a bill that will again be type number. It'll again, required will be true. And we'll just default it to 0. That probably isn't going to be the way it's going to be, but that's okay. Questions on what any of that stuff is? All right, so I'm going to do a file save. I'm going to grab those first 2 lines again and just copy them to the clipboard. And I'm going to add one more model in here. So again, I'm going back to models, right mouse click, choose new file, and this will be order model.js. Put in those 2 lines. And then I'm going to start writing it out. So const order schema equals new schema. You've seen this before, or this type of thing before. So, and again, at the bottom here, stop. I'm going to put in again that module dot exports equal order. Let me close that. There we go. Equal Mongoose dot model order and order schema. All right, you'll notice again I'm not putting in semicolons. If I get bit by that, I have to put them back in later. I'll do that, but I'm not really going to worry about it. Okay? All right. Now, something can be in somebody's cart, but technically they haven't ordered it yet. Would you agree with that? It could literally, depending on how you set this up, could sit in their cart for a long time. All right? Reason I'm telling you that is, for now, I'm going to see, they might be almost identical. I'm going to go into the cart model, and I'm going to grab everything that's in there from the user ID down to the bill. In fact, please go back to this, because I guess I did skip one field in here. We want to put a date added in here too. Go back to your cart model and add a date added in there. You know, when did they put it in the cart? Just like we did before, and the default will be date.now. Okay? And that's just the date they put it in the cart. We may not even use that. I don't know. All right? But I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab every bit of this that I just put in. Everything between the new Mongoose. What does that say? Cart schema equals new Mongoose. That should be just mongoose.schema. I don't know how it gave me the types in there. That should be schema. All right. So I grabbed everything that's in here. I'm copying it to the clipboard, and I'm going to put it into my order model. Ideally, it's going to be the same thing as what's in the cart. All right? So I think that's everything. Let me double check here, but I believe it is. Items. ID, type string, name string. Quantity. Price. Now, just so you know this, it would have been totally legit. This will work fine as it is, but you may or may not remember this from when we talked about it earlier. Since there's only one thing here, I could have literally just done this, like that. You can do that. I never know when I'm going to add more, so I'm just going to leave it in there. All right? So that's literally what I had for today. What we have to do then is we have to figure out 4 routes, one for each one of these models. We're going to do 2 of those tomorrow. We're going to do 2 of them on Thursday, and then we'll see exactly where we are. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So the rest of the period will be lab. I'm going to go in, and those of you where I asked where your work is and you sent me the stuff yesterday, I'm going to attempt to go in and grade everything today. Now, once you go in there and you look and you go, well, I turned this in, if that's the case, just send me an email. Let me know if I didn't grade something. All right? And am I right in assuming you still haven't been able to get that to work, or did you get that to work?
Yeah, I still haven't got the work.
All right, so we're going to take a look at that too. Okay.